So I'm Joy. I'm Korean American, but I live here in Jakarta, and I have just finished Resource Global Cohort 3 in Jakarta, and I've been living here about 4 years. I'm probably one of the only ones who was in the cohort as someone from the nonprofit sector. So I direct a nonprofit called Light of Dawn International, and it serves marginalized communities around Jakarta. So Light of Dawn is a nonprofit organization established about 3 years ago, and we're pretty much almost like a holding company for different initiatives that serve different marginalized communities around Jakarta through education and vocational initiatives. So one population we serve are refugees, and we have a refugee school that serves a little bit over 200 students. Another thing we do is a financial assistance program for refugees. And a third initiative we have is education for communities out in Bantar, one of the largest landfills in the world, and we provide preschool education, after-school tutoring, and university scholarships for them. And then the newest initiative we've developed is a vocational program where we train Indonesian youth and refugees in online work opportunities, and then we plug them right into those opportunities so they earn an income while growing their professional skills.
Great.
So I first heard about Resource Global when I was in my previous job teaching at a business school. I heard about it through church, an international church that I go to in Jakarta, and one of our elders is a board member of Resource Global, and I remember him kind of tapping my shoulder after service one day and saying, hey, you should check out something called Resource Global. It would be a great fit for you, because he knew I have a passion for developing people. And then I also met his son, Jonathan, who was part of the first cohort. And after that, after 1 or 2 years, I heard about it again from Grace's husband. And then I realized, I just need to check this thing out. And that's when I jumped into this new job, and I had a schedule that I could, manage so that I can join the cohort. So my experience with Resource Global was great. It was what I needed at this point as a new director in a new position. It just provided a community that gives me accountability, spiritual accountability, and keeps me coming back every month through the teaching sessions to remember what really matters and to look at the big picture of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So it was a really good community to keep me on track spiritually throughout the whole first year of my job as a director. And then the GCG was perfect timing, because it was a time when I was making a lot of really critical partnership decisions for our organization, some major breakthroughs, and I was grappling through, whether to go for it or not. And when I landed at GCG, it was a retreat that was very refreshing and allowed me to connect with people who were more experienced than me and could give me helpful spiritual and organizational advice. So it was a time where I felt that somebody was actually pouring into me, and I could really refresh myself spiritually and then be prepared to make some of those larger decisions. I'm learning that leadership is really not easy, but it really requires you to kind of zoom out and keep your head above the water. And that involves a tremendous amount of, again, spiritual accountability, because you have to, if you are a believer and you're in a leadership position, the biggest picture you could look at is what God is trying to do through you and through your organization. And so I've been learning through Resource Global, through the testimonies I'm hearing, that at the end of the day, it's about your willingness to be broken and humble before God and letting Him use you in whatever position you are, and then recognizing that and coming back to that over and over again. So I think, I've been learning that leadership requires discipline, and it requires a lot more attentiveness to what God is trying to say to you. So rising up in an organization doesn't mean you become less and less spiritual, but you become more and more spiritual. Yeah. So one of the biggest themes I noticed in the GCG was brokenness and vulnerability. And I was really amazed at the testimonies shared there of people who were willing to really share about their major professional setbacks or even just things happening in their personal lives. where they were completely vulnerable and broken. And what I learned from that is that leadership requires you to be broken and turned more into the image of Christ. And I think as a Christian, being in a leadership position, that's a totally different kind of journey that you go through. While everyone else is trying to climb some kind of corporate ladder or rack up points in the system, we're just trying to become more and more broken, more and more humble, more and more like Jesus. And then, things happened in the last few months, even in my life, where I had to be vulnerable and to share things with my staff. But I remembered from GCC that there's no loss in being more vulnerable. And in fact, people support you more and bond around you more and see that you're authentic when you're like that as a leader. Some of the convictions I'm feeling is that I need to be very disciplined about having time with God. Especially if you look at Jesus, his example when he was in his early 30s leading a ministry that would go global, he frequently went away to lonely places to be with God and to spend time in very focused prayer, even though the needs were overwhelming. So that's one conviction I have, is that if Jesus had to do that, then I absolutely need to do that. And so I think that's where the Resource Global community, we can hold each other accountable to making sure we spend that time, especially in prayer, with God alone. I think a lot of us do things in groups or in community, but sometimes we also need that one-on-one time with God. So in line with that, one action step I've taken is actually Monday mornings. I block off. I try my best not to have meetings in that time unless I absolutely need to. And that's the time I work from home, and I spend a good, hour or two, wake up earlier, and I just spend that time in prayer and praying over very specific things that are before me for making decisions, or about certain people, or about, people even in my personal life. So that's one very simple, small step that I've taken, but that's one thing I want to keep maintaining over time. Another conviction is to really invest in the staff under me and to develop them, whether they're believers or not, and to really help them grow under my leadership and through this organization, so that by serving with us, by serving marginalized communities, they also grow as people and as individuals. So one action step I'm taking is to build more intentional times for staff development. This morning we were doing a staff workshop on organizational charts and structure and roles, but really spending time to listen to staff and their needs and how we can better support them. And I think we can stand out as a nonprofit in Indonesia, as a nonprofit that really cares about the people that work with us. Because this is a sector when people can burn out really easily and feel like they're not really being supported.